Request for Shifa Marid of one young child from a Sayyid family who has come from Pakistan. The child is suffering from kidney failure, both, and the condition at the moment is a bit critical. Let us all pray to Almighty that the child recovers. Al-Fatiha al-Shifa al-Marid. We have been praying for all those who have taken sick. By the grace of God, we have Akbar Bhai with us. We pray for his full recovery, that he may be able to be with us as he used to be. And for Mullah Fidaus and Khaki, who has returned home. One elderly mu'min who used to be with us every time, especially on Friday, is Muhammad Hussain Bhai Ghulam Singh, Daya Kanji, who was just operated for his eyes, and when he went home, he was quite well. When he went for the next visit, he fell down and broke his bones. And because of the fracture, he has been hospitalized again. So we also pray that Allah may grant him full recovery. We were discussing Jang-e-Khandaq last time. The Battle of the Trench, which was an event which took place in the life of the Prophet after he came to Medina in 5th Hijrah. And so we continue with the events from 5th onwards. But before I do so, I have to tell you that the Prophet was not only all the time facing the enemies and fighting. A lot of work was done by the Prophet after the state of Islam was established in Medina, and he named it Medina, meaning a city. As I said earlier, the name of that city is Madinatul Rasul, city of the Prophet. And the name was given by the Prophet himself, otherwise it was known by people as Yathrib or many other names. One of the principal features of Islamic teaching, especially promulgated in Medina, is the concept of sin and guna. There is a marked difference between sin or guna taught by Islam and the way it has been taught by other religions. In Christianity, for example, there is something like atonement of sin, where it is believed that Jesus Christ died for the sins of all. In Hinduism, for example, the concept is that sin must be repaid by the form of rebirth, which is known as Avagavan or even Punarjanma, reincarnation of soul, where a man has got to repay whatever he has done by being born again in a state which would either be superior to his former existence or inferior. And that the law of karma governs life. Islam says very simply that sin is a transgression committed by man against the law of God. It does no harm to God. The harm reverts back to the doer himself or herself, and he or she shall account for the deeds on the day of judgment. Over. Nobody can die for my sins. Why should he? There cannot be a clear license to say that since so and so has died for my sins, therefore whatever I do is now forgiven because somebody has died for it. The question of the atonement of sin was brought into Islam by Jewish and Christian influence. I want to make this very clear. Many a times Even we have been told that Imam Hussein alayhi salam died for our sins. He did not die for our sins. But we are being told this because of the influence of the teachings of Christianity which infiltrated into the Muslim thinking. He did not die for our sins. Otherwise that means that from now onward there is a clean bill, do whatever you like, because Karbala has already transpired and he died for us, therefore you do whatever you like. That is not correct. There is no question of anyone dying for the other. Similarly, the question, law of karma, or that where you say that somebody must suffer in this world for what he did in his so-called previous existence, then let me give you an example. If I were to drive and somebody, God forbid, collides with my car and dies, car accident, according to the law of karma, the one who died has been repaid for what he did in his previous life. But according to the law of the government, I am going to be tried for having killed him. If I were to stand up in a Hindu court and say that I haven't committed any sin, I have just helped him to repay what he did in his last existence. You see, it seems so silly and absurd. So the answers to all these are not forthcoming because it's a philosophic question. It's a matter of faith, and everyone has a faith in his own religion. In Quran, the concept of sin explained by the Prophet was very, very clear. You commit a sin, the adverse effect of sin devolves upon you. It does no harm to the Creator. It does harm to you. In ahsantum li anfusikum. If you commit good, you are committing good for your own selves. Wa in asa'tum falaha. And if you transgress and commit sin, it is for your own selves. If that is understood, as it is clearly now explained by Quran, then let us take an example. Some 2 or 3 examples. The Prophet in Medina Munawwara emphasized, told people once, twice, thrice, and the ayah of Quran came one after the other: stop drinking, stop using intoxicants. And by telling them repeatedly not to drink, the Prophet sometimes would even admonish in very severe words: the la'na, the curse of God upon he who sows the seed in a vineyard, upon he who cultivates grapes for the sake of wine, upon he who sells it, upon he who partakes of it, upon he who finally makes wine out of it, upon he who sells it, helps it sell, drinks it, helps it drink, upon he who sits in a place where people are drinking. And then he said, but you know why? If you take a pint of whiskey or wine or beer, nothing, no harm is meted out to Allah Himself. He doesn't shake there. It is you who are harming yourself. Allah in Quran says that He made these things forbidden, to gamble and to drink intoxicants, because shaitan wants to bring misery to you, unhappiness to you through these expedients. Oh people, do you understand? Will you refrain? That means the harm is done to society, to a family, to an individual. And we know it. Whether we would like to say yes to it or not is a matter of opinion. But we know in our hearts, every school of thought today knows that to take alcohol, to gamble, cannot be a small sin. It's a major sin which has helped create so much of unhappiness in human families and human communities. Fine. He said, stop zina. Zina is adultery or fornication. Stop it. And he stopped it. And he tried his level best. Even those women who were of loose character before Islam, when they did tawbah, tawbah does not mean only, that is only what women do. When the wife finds that the husband is very, very upset, he says, Hane tawbah kayanti. That means, I will not do it again. But that tawbah is not tawbah. Tawbah is not only saying astaghfirullah rabbi wa atubu ilayh. Tawbah means first to repent and then to renounce the habit. So those women who renounced their profession and they said, Ya Rasulullah, before Islam we were on the wrong path, we are not going to do it again. The Prophet saw that they got married into very honorable families so that they were protected and they would not repeat the vices and the evil. Once you have done, there is a mistake in your life, you don't commit it again. But those who persist in perversion, then of course what follows is not a harm to Allah, but harm to the family and human community itself. And now, for the last few days, you must be getting in your letterbox something which is called AIDS. And many people have been asking me that, Mullah Sahib, what do you think about AIDS? What can I think about it? We know it. And the whole world at the moment is shaking and shivering. And we all pray that even out of our innocence, we may not be caught in the trap of AIDS. Innocently. Without having committed any such vice. An innocent man who goes for a blood transfusion today, they say, may catch AIDS. Or a common syringe used without proper sterilization may transplant AIDS. Anything can come. Not necessarily homosexuals, but even heterosexual can commit. Even innocent couples can transmit. So the terror is now epidemic. And that is why we are receiving the leaflets into our letterboxes that don't die of ignorance. The question is that the Prophet said this in 14 centuries ago, hadith. Whenever that hadith was being read, pardon me for this, because nobody would like to discuss things like homosexuality or zina and fornication too often from mimbar, because it is not a palatable subject. But Allah in Quran has discussed it, the Prophet has discussed it, and we would like to discuss it tonight, a bit of it, before we come to our original subject. Then look, there came a time when this hadith of the Prophet was being produced in support of what is in Quran. Our own Shia Isnasi doctors used to argue and say, Mullah Sahib, there is no perversion in homosexuality. There is no perversion. It is just a different way of satisfying an instinctive need. Either you do it heterosexually or you do it homosexually. It is just the same thing. Because there were fresh arrivals from medical universities with degrees shining upon their hands. We could not as laymen argue except tell them this is what the Prophet has said. What did he say? I'm talking from the sources of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah and Tashayyuh Shia, both together, confirmed. The Prophet said, إِذَا عَاشَ الْمَرْءُ مُصِرًّا لِلَّوَاتِ. When a person lives persistently engaged in homosexual, وَلَمْ يَتُبْ, and does not make tawbah, that means does not resist, فَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ لَهُ حِجَارَةً مِّن تِلْكَ الْحِجَارَةِ مَنِيَّتُهُ فِيهِ وَلَا يَرَاهُ أَحَدٌ. Hadith. What is that? He said, whoever persists in this perversion and does not do tawbah, Allah sends unto him that stone. Which stone has been mentioned in Quran? I am coming to that. Allah has described that stone in such a way that you will really ponder over that ayah. Maniyatuhu fi, in that stone his death is definitely involved. Wala yarahu ahad, and the disease will be such that none will dare go to see him. This is what the Prophet said. What does Quran say? Why did the Prophet say this? He said this in support of ayah of Quran, Surah Hud, where Allah is discussing Qawm Lut. Allah does not punish, never, unless he has completed his hujjah. Remember this. If a person commits a sin and transgresses, the punishment does not descend immediately. This is what Allah told Hazrat Musa alayhi salam on Tur. Oh Musa, when his mother died. Musa did not know that mother is dying. He knew that mother is ill. But when he came to the mountain of Sinai, on that day he had not known that mother had already passed away. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his first revelation told him, Musa, I must console you, because today your mother has died. You have lost your mother. As you have come here, your mother at home has expired. So I console you, because there is no greater bereavement, there is no greater loss than the loss of a mother. You know why? So Musa started weeping and crying. Naturally anyone would. So Hazrat Musa, when he wept, Allah said, it becomes you to weep. You must weep. Do you know why? There isn't anyone who can be so loving and lovable but the mother. You don't know Musa. She used to rise in the middle of the night while you were asleep, to raise her hands and pray and say, Oh Allah, let my son be saved from all calamities. Let him be happy. Let him remain happy. And if there is a part of my life which you can slice off and give to my son, give it to my son so that he may remain and I may die. This is true of every mother. Is it not so? But Musa, love of mother is unparalleled. But my love for my creation is equal to 40 and more mothers. When anyone commits a sin, I do not write that sin, giving him time that he might realize and come back and do tawbah. If he does tawbah, I shall leave him as if he committed no sin. He gives us time. He gives us time. Even the malaika who are supposed to register our deeds are told not to register for at least 7 hours. That the boy, the girl may say, Astaghfirullah Rabbi wa atubu ilayh. I have done this, I will not do it again. It will be not recorded. I am not talking of being erased. I am talking of not being recorded. To erase is something else. After writing, to erase is something else. Not to record means there is nothing on record. He does not punish. He gives us time. What is known in our language as mohlat. He gives us time and tries to bring us back by various ways. When he loves me, he puts me into several trials and tribulations in life to awaken my spirit and tell me, come back, my dear, come back. Have you understood now or not yet? But when I become incorrigible, I don't want to change, I don't want to open my eyes, then comes the time when the punishment comes, not because of any revenge, but because of the natural outcome of the sins I commit. So, Quran says we sent Hazrat Lut. We tried to tell the community not to commit the sin of homosexuality. We explained them the ills of it. They would not change. فَإِذَا جَاءَ أَمْرُنَا. Now Quran says, then of course our decree came. Final decree. فَإِذَا جَاءَ أَمْرُنَا جَعَلْنَا عَالِيَهَا سَافِلَهَا وَأَمْطَرْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ حِجَارَةً مِّن سِجِّيلٍ مَنْضُودٍ مُسَوَّمَةً مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَمَا هِيَ مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ بِبَعِيدٍ. Only if we read Quran. وَأَمْطَرْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ. And we sent back from heaven, from up, What? Hijaratan, small stones. Min sijil, from the ones we have registered and recorded. Sijil, something which is, so to say, in stock. Something which we have kept in register and record for such sins. What was that sijil which came? Manvud, one after the other. Musawwamatam, with mark from us upon it. The Mufassirin have written it was a rain of stones. Allah does not say that. He says, we sent hijar, something like pebbles and stones, sijil, from our record and register. Manvud, one after the other. Musawwamatan, with a mark from us. And the Prophet said, that will be sent to those who persist, even today. Because Allah at the end of this ayah says, وَمَا هِيَ مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ بِبَعِيدٍ. And that stored in our register is not far and distant from any transgressor. That means be it 20th century, be it 19th. Whoever does it is going to get it. But it comes at the right time. It comes when it comes from the form of punishment. When today we are told that in certain country after every 1500 men and women there is one suffering from AIDS. We are told there is a special ward where people come there to die of AIDS. We are told this. At the same time we are told by the same press that homosexuality must continue. How? Because it is a norm of society. There are people who like to exist that way. Now what to do? Save yourself by not becoming virtuous, remain vicious, but use condoms. And when someone stood up and said he is ridiculed and jeered, although he said that I am a prophet of God. I am not concerned about his prophecy or whether he came from God or not. I am only to say one thing, that what he said, whatever he said was substantially true. And something which the Archbishop of Canterbury or some other religious head should have supported. But rather than support it in public, the religious heads of Christianity came out to appease the crowd. One has got to speak on moral lessons if you want to save humanity. For cigarettes, which I smoke, I admit, but I don't think that, I believe that it doesn't cause any disease. It causes. But I am a victim of that human complacence, that it will happen to you but not to me. And that is my weakness. What I say is this, that for cigarettes, they could do the best they could to dissuade the masses from smoking. Why can't they do it for alcohol? Because that, of course, is their weakness. And why cannot they do it for such things? Because the society since 1960s has become fully promiscuous and permissive, and therefore it cannot now change. Therefore they are being told to live as they lived in the last 2 decades, but they must only change their habits. What habits? Some preventives, some contraceptives to use. So, Inna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir. Allah is omnipotent. Your contraceptives and your protections and restrictions cannot save you. Once the la'na has come in, this is the la'nat of God. And in a society where we live and we are being dragged into it, there are 2 things. One is that it is time that we learn that our moral teachings of Islam are really something worth following. We must not let our society be loose. We must not let our own children become loose. We must not let our youths go wayward. Because that is a time we can't control anything. A young man is 8 or 10 hours away from the house. Who is going to control his movements? Tell me. Under the influence of a school, under the influence of his schoolmates, in a society which is known to us, who is going to control? One night, Friday in a week, is not going to work miracles. 2 hours or 3 hours of madrasa on a Sunday is not going to work miracles. The miracle can only be worked when there is a coordination between home and school, and that was the reason why we started with the establishment of nursery school here, but we have only 11 children. Because we want our children to dance this way and that way and say, I belong to somebody. And here there is La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah Pratham Ali Bija Hasan. And we feel that if they learn this, that means they are not advanced. You see, this is the subject. And now to tell that young man, look, these are the results. When Islam said, Musawwamatan ma'indi rabbika wa ma hiya min al-zalimin biba'id, it was a warning up to the day of judgment. Whoever commits this transgression, this adab will not be far from him. And we have seen it. Whether the world likes it or not, it is adab. And this adab has come. Now call it whatever you want. After 10 years we are going to see the solution of it. Fine. What will happen to the masses who die for those 10 years? One thing. Second thing, there is going to be no eradication of it. There is going to be a solution to it, like one we have in tuberculosis or cancer or heart or whatever it be. But there is no eradication of it. Remember, this disease was there. And we have in Islamic history the symptoms exactly described in earlier history. When the Abbasid Empire and Umayyad Empire had the same habits, they suffered the same way and they died the same way. What happened there is now that we have been told that this disease is now specified and given a name. Remember one thing, that this is the concept of sin in Islam, that transgression causes harm to ourselves. And this is what the Prophet was trying to do. The society gradually became clean. No gambling, no drinking, no fornication, no homosexuality, and all these things and many other vices gradually cleaned up from a society to make it a model society in Madinah Munawwara. This is what the Prophet did. Now, came 6th Hijri. I'm finishing it today. It is really very, very trying to sit before this naked light for more than 30 minutes. You see, thank God that we have winter, but if it was summer, then you can imagine what would be my position. But I have to put up with it. There's no way out. Inshallah, till our Imam Bara is ready. So, came 6th Hijrah. And the Prophet announced that I am going for Umrah. Now we know that he cannot enter Mecca. He has migrated from Mecca to Medina. He is in Medina. For 5 years he never went to Mecca. And the Meccans were all enemies, wouldn't allow him to come. 6th Hijrah came and the Prophet announced, I am going for Umrah. 1,500 people at least accompanied him from Medina, telling him, Ya Rasulullah, how can we go to Umrah? They won't allow us enter. The Prophet said, I am not out to fight. I am going for Umrah, for Ziyarat of Kaaba. How can they stop me? So the Prophet advanced. As he advanced and as he reached few miles away from Mecca, the people of Mecca became aware that Muhammad is coming. So they thought that he has come to fight again. We are not out to fight. Why is he coming? So they sent someone. When he came, the Prophet told him that I have not come to fight because there is no fight. I have just made a niyyah and a decision that I am coming for Umrah, for Ziyarah of Holy Kaaba. And I don't think why you should stop me. All these people are coming. You can see we have no ammunition. And the camels we have, they are all for Qurbani, because in those days, camels for sacrifice were always marked. So they all bear the marks of sacrifice. You can see them. We are just coming for Qurbani and we are coming for Umrah. So 2 or 3 people came and went. giving the message to people of Makkah that Muhammad is not coming to fight. Let him enter. But the people would not. Especially Abu Sufyan said no. So the Prophet sent Uthman. Why he sent Uthman? He sent Uthman ibn Affan because he is from Banu Umayyah, and that the strong stalwarts of opposition in Mecca at that time were from Banu Umayyah, Abu Sufyan included. He sent Uthman and told him, go and tell your people that Muhammad is genuinely concerned about Umrah only. He will stay there for 3 days, do his Umrah and come back. When Uthman reached there and Abu Sufyan welcomed him, he said, Uthman, glad that you have come. What is the position? And he explained. So he said, Uthman, you want to do Umrah? Go and do. But Muhammad can never enter Makkah. So Uthman said, Abu Sufyan, there can be no Umrah by Uthman without the Prophet being together. If you don't allow me, then I go back. He said, you can't go back. You are held hostage. So Uthman was captured and kept as hostage. Here, the Prophet was gradually, he was waiting for it. But when he found that there is no answer, people started talking, Ya Rasulullah, Uthman must have been killed. So the Prophet said, we advance. Came to a place which is known as Dhul Hulayfa. Even today, that place is there. When he came at Dhul Hulayfa, the Prophet said, make a niyyah of ihram. So all of them wore ihram. Once ihram was worn, now there was no doubt that this is Umrah. When the people now coming to see the Prophet, saw the Prophet and the people with ihram. The Prophet said, now look, this is ihram. We have come, and in ihram we can't even take any ammunition or any weapons together. It is haram. So you can't. So the Prophet said, right. Rather than advancing straight onto Makkah, we go right. And there was a valley there, which is known as Thaniya. And the Prophet diverted towards Makkah, but rightwards. Makkah, 4 miles around Makkah is haram, remember that. 4 miles around Makkah is haram from various places. The Prophet chose the remote right place, which is known as Hudaybiyah. And he came up to Hudaybiyah and stopped there. Now Hudaybiyah is just the boundary. Enter from Hudaybiyah into Makkah, into Haram, and from Haram to Makkah. The people came there and said, Ya Rasulullah, enter. He said, I must know first, is Uthman killed or not? If he is killed, then I am entering. If he is not killed, then I shall wait till I get the permission. I don't want to fight. And the news came that Uthman is not killed, but Uthman is only captured as a hostage. So the Prophet said, in that case we will not advance. Tell them still to give us permission to enter Makkah. So they came and they said, Muhammad, this time let us come to some compromise, a truce, a sulh. The Prophet said, I am all ready for it. What sulh? Some terms. Hey, what terms? So we can say, for example, that there shall be no war between us for 10 years to come. The Prophet said, that is agreed. What other term? He said, other term is that whoever comes from your side on his own volition to Mecca is welcome during those 10 years, for Umrah or for trade. And whoever comes from our side to this place, to your place, should be welcome and should have safe custody. The Prophet said, that is very nice. Whoever deserts you, leaves Islam, comes to us in Mecca, must not be captured or recaptured. He must be allowed free. But whoever deserts us and enters Medina, he must be repatriated. The Prophet said, agreed. Agreed. Finally, you shall not enter Mecca this year. You can come next year. The Prophet said, agreed. So they sat down. And Imam Ali was told to write down the terms. And this is what Imam Ali wrote. هذا ما صالح محمد رسول الله. Of course he first wrote Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and then he wrote هذا ما صالح به محمد بن عبد الله مع سهيل ibn Fulan. The name of the person who came from there was Suhail. Just as he wrote this, gentleman who came from Mecca said, Muhammad, had I agreed that you are Rasulullah, then there was no question of sulh. Why are you writing Muhammadun Rasulullah? I don't acknowledge you as Rasulullah. That is one thing. Second thing, we don't know what is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So it must begin with Bismikallahumma, the way we say it. The Prophet said, Ya Ali, write Bismikallahumma. He said, you must now change from Muhammadun Rasulullah to Muhammad and your father's name, Muhammad ibn Abdullah. So the Prophet said, Ya Ali, write Muhammad ibn Abdullah and strike off Muhammadun Rasulullah. Majlisi alayhi rahmah says that when the Prophet told Imam Ali, strike off Rasulullah and write Muhammad ibn Abdullah, Imam Ali said, Ya Rasulullah, I cannot go against your wishes. Your order is order. But how can these hands which have written Rasulullah strike off Rasulullah and write Ibn Abdullah? The answer the Prophet gave is the answer for all the Wahhabis of the world today. This is something, when I read history, I would like to see that I read between the lines. And I read the message. The Wahhabis tell us that Muhammad was a man, died dust to dust. Forget it. Those who have been to Mecca, they must have seen now gradually the name of Muhammad coming out from everywhere. It's only Allah, 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 as if they knew Allah from the day they were born. Who introduced Allah to us? Muhammad. In Adhan, God has kept Muhammadun Rasulullah with his La ilaha illallah. In Namaz, he has kept Ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh with La ilaha illallah. But we are wiser than God. So when Imam Ali said, Ya Rasulullah, how can I strike off that? The Prophet said, Uktub Muhammad ibn Abdullah. Write Muhammad ibn Abdullah. لأن محمد رسول الله هو محمد ibn Abdullah. Beautiful. He said, Muhammadun Rasulullah is Muhammad son of Abdullah. I mean, there is no difference. That means the Prophet wanted to answer the people to come, that whether you say Muhammad ibn Abdullah or Muhammadun Rasulullah, it is one and the same. There is no dichotomy between Risala and the personality of the Prophet. Of course, the Prophet took the letter himself and he wrote. And I now ask those who say he did not know how to write. He wrote. And he did not take the page upside down. He took it straight. He could read also. And he himself wrote Ibn Abdullah. And the sulh was finalized with the terms not in favor of the Prophet, because now you can see there was one term that you must go back and come to next year. Second, that our people deserting us, coming to you, must be brought back to us. Your people deserting you will not be our responsibility. They will have safe conduct here. So it was naturally on the term which was not favorable to the Prophet. And here Umar ibn al-Khattab, the Khalifa number 2 of Islam and Muslims, he has said, I never doubted in the prophethood of the Prophet more than on that day. That means he has been doubting in the past, but that was the maximum and climax of it. Ma shakaktu fi risalatihi kama shakaktu yawm al-Hudaybiyah. I never doubted his prophethood as much as I did on the day of Hudaybiyah. Fine. He said, Abu Bakr said, Ya Rasulullah, why? Why on these terms? Why are we subdued? And the Prophet said, don't ask me why. This is the order of God. وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. It is wahy of God. Don't ask me. Am I not your Prophet? Abu Bakr said, Ya Rasulullah, Bala, believe in me. Whatever I am doing is correct. Well, on that, all the people assembled except one, of course, swore the new oath of allegiance on the hands of the Prophet, which is known as Bay'at Ridwan. And as the Prophet returned, only one man, of course, did not do bay'ah, but he was not there. You know, in a classroom, When a teacher wants to ask questions, the one who knows most but doesn't want to know, doesn't want to answer, or one who knows most means the other way around, and wants to see that the teacher does not see him, what he does, he just goes under the desk. Or he tries to hide his head behind the boy who's standing or sitting in front of him. So one of them, of course, he hid himself under the camel so that he could not be seen. He refused. The others all, of course, swore the oath of allegiance. And when the Prophet was returning after this sulh, the surah came, Inna fatahna laka fatham mubina liyaghfir laka Allahu ma taqaddama min dhanbika wa ma ta'akhkhar wa liyutimma ni'matahu alayk wa yahdiyaka siratan mustaqima. Inna fatahna laka fatham mubina. Verily we have given you an open victory. Now the question is, people close to the Prophet are doubtful whether the terms were good or not. And there has been no war. What has been there is just a truce. And Allah calls it Fathum Mubin. After Khandaq, after Badr, after Khaybar, after Hunain, after all those great battles of Islam, there was no ayah of Fath Mubin. The ayah of Fath Mubin has come after the truce, where not a single drop of blood was spilled. Why? This shows the hidden philosophy of Islam, that victory was not based on sword, it was based on the understanding it created. What happened? What happened? The people who came to the Prophet were giving safe conduct. Those who went away, they were given safe conduct. Those who deserted the Prophet and deserted Islam, the Prophet said, there is no force. Even today, sometimes people say, Mullah Sahib, if you will not help me, I will become Ismaili. You are laughing, but my heart bleeds. You laugh because you find it quite funny, isn't it? Yes. But my heart bleeds because I am right in the throes of it. I know. Kujadanand hale masu buksarani sahilha. How can those people walking on the shores know what is the position of one who is right in the stream? But I do receive this letter. If you don't help me, Mullah Sahib, I am becoming Ismaili. Right. I am becoming Bohora. Fine. I am turning Christian, because here it is Christian more. The answer I give them is that to help or not to help is secondary. But if you want to convert into Christianity, do it as soon as you can, because Islam doesn't want such things. But if you want to understand Islam, then I am at your service. Come and see me. But if you are going to threaten me and say that if I don't help, I am going to convert, then do it as soon as possible. We want this kachra as soon as possible to get out. Because Islam said, La ikraha fid deen. We don't fall on the knees of the people to say, please remain, otherwise if you go away, the whole house will become empty. It will not become empty. We want people who understand faith. We don't want people who try to buy faith because of facilities and money. This is not a society. It's a religion. A religion is stuck to under all thick and thin. You may have hard days. Allah is testing you. You may have difficult days. Allah is testing you. When people fought in Uhud and Badr under the mountains and scorching sun, saying La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, we people for our mundane and temporal benefits are prepared to threaten, to change and convert. To hell with it. To hell. So, the Prophet said, those who desert me and go, let them go. There is no compulsion. So what happened is some Muslims went to Mecca, not deserting the Prophet, but for business, for Umrah, because they were allowed. The Prophet wasn't allowed. They went there. They were not allowed to come back. Those who came here, they were allowed to come back. What happened? Muslims who went there started propagating Islam. And those who came from there here converted to Islam and went back as missionaries. Within no time, Makkah was ready to receive Muhammad without any attack. Because half of Makkah was Muslim by the time the Prophet entered after 2 years. So the Prophet knew. This was Inna Fatahna لك فتحا مبينا. This is Fath Mubin. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.